and you just find them. And you also are able to keep your top talent, because if people feel blocked in any way, shape, or form, and they're super ambitious and talented, and they're going to find space somewhere else and another company. So one is being able to actually allow people to be close to the work, number one. Number two is to free up their time so they can be doing more meaningful work as opposed to just administrative work, which is where it comes in more of the AI component, automation type of discussion. And three is just really making the managers and the leaders' job all about talent and bringing talent along, because that truly is a legacy of a manager and a leader, is to be able to create that next generation and making that part of their role and their job and rewarding that as well.
You're listening to the Modern People Leader podcast, where we go behind the scenes with today's top HR leaders and work experts. We talk to them about how they've gotten to where they're at, what they do every day, and what they see coming next for the future of work. Hope you enjoy.
So Daniel, we have an early-ish Monday podcast. We don't do a lot of Monday podcasts. It's even more rare that we do an early Monday podcast, but I'm feeling good. Like Daniel often says that, the podcast is the highlight of the week, and it certainly is for me too. And so Shannon, welcome to the Modern People Leader. How are you doing?
Doing great. I'm glad to be here. Nice to see you guys.
Great to see you. Great to see you. Well, we have a lot to talk about, and we want to make sure we can get through as much as we possibly can. It always blows me away how quick an hour goes. And our guests are always like, wow, do you think we're going to, do we need more? How are we going to fill the time? Before we hit record, we were talking about awkward silences, and on this show, there's rarely any silence because there's just so much we want to talk about. We start every episode off the same way. We call it Good News Stories. It's just a fun, positive way to kick things off. We start by sharing a personal or a work-related story from the last week or so. We prefer for our guests to go first. So you mind kicking us off?
Sure. Actually, I think I'm going to marry personal and professional. I was actually at Northeastern University visiting my daughter this weekend at the family weekend. And it's so great to have a 19-year-old and a 22-year-old who know way more than you do at any given time. And I spent most of my weekend being pulled from my daughter on how and what young people want in the workplace this week. And lots of unsolicited advice, but usually actually plays really well to our analyst class. So I tend to like this marriage or this closeness of my daughter's perspective in the world we're living here at BNY with all of our analysts.
Super relatable, but I'm not going to steal my thunder because I have a share about that topic later. I am going to go, it's going to seem like sad news story, and I know that's not the segment. The segment's good news story. So I'm going to start sad, but I promise I'll get back on track with some good news. So my sad news is for the audience that actually watches the YouTube. It's only a few of you. Most people listen to these podcasts. You'll notice that right behind me, that space over there is a little different to what it was the last episode. And what was there was a drum set. And so, Shannon, I don't think I shared this in our intake call. I was a band nerd and, played drums from the age of 12 to 21, and thought I would be a rock drummer musician in college. Turns out that didn't have a positive outlook. So I chose business economics instead. And that has been great. And so fast forward to about a year ago, my now wife, then partner, decided she wanted to learn how to play the drums. And I was like, oh, great. Like, what a beautiful thing. Yes, you should learn to play the drums. She takes a class, decides she wants to rent a drum set. And I was like, are you for real? I thought it was going to be like one of those electric ones that you could turn volume up, volume down. No, it was like a full on drum set. And so within 2 months of that, her desire to play the drums went away. But I was like, we're renting this thing, we should get ROI on it. And I started playing the drums, and I have rediscovered just a beautiful part of my life, a practice that I have now, but it's gone away, and we're returning it. It's all packed up in the car. We're going to drop it off today. That's the sad news. The good news is we're preparing for a baby boy. And so in lieu of the drum set, you can't see behind that rocker is a bassinet, quick fold bassinet. So that's the reason for my scenery change. And in addition to the bassinet, my wife, so we co-parent 2 teenage daughters that I'll talk about in a little while. My wife was feeling a little anxious about just getting ready. And I was like, you know what? Let's just knock out a few things. Like, why not? And unboxed all the Dr. Brown's bottles, and we put the stroller together, put the bassinet together, did a few things. I packed up the drums. And so that's my good news, is we are officially in baby preparation mode. But, there is a little mourning, but, the love, if I went 20 years without playing the drums and picked it up, I can go, 6 months without playing them.
I think
and now at
that's
least
a pretty good trade-off, though.
I think so.
Yeah, and you can convince Joaquin to get into the drums in I don't know, 3 years, get a new drum set. So
as early as possible.
Out. Yeah. Well, my good news is going to be, I think, much shorter, and I'm going to go personal. I'm a big Texas Longhorns fan, sometimes to my detriment. And this past weekend, we played against Mississippi State, who hasn't won an SEC game since 2023, I believe. And they took us to overtime. We're down by 17 going into the fourth quarter, or maybe it was the beginning of the fourth quarter.
It didn't look good.
It did not look good. I was texting my friends, yeah, we're cooked. I think we're done. I don't think we're going to win this game. But we had a miraculous comeback and we won in overtime. So don't really know how I feel about the team after that game. It's not looking great, but they won. They're keeping the hope alive.
Yeah. W is a W, though. That's all you can do, right?
And for a young quarterback, I think this is our second overtime win. So I feel like we're building some resilience, which...
And it was his best game of the year, so... There's some positives that came out of it.
Always positives. Well, let's jump in. Shannon, I am familiar, having been a former banker and living, having been in the world of finance in New York, I'm very familiar with BNY, amazing organization with a long, long history. But, and because of that, I've been super excited to hear your story and, your journey, the career that brought you to this amazing organization, and how you became chief people officer. So what's your story? I call this a Brene Brown question. What's your story?
Over the last, let's call it 4 or 5 weeks, we've heard a pretty clear theme. People teams are going hyper customized. From Andrew Golden's story about vibe coding his engagement platform, to Brandon Weber talking about how companies are moneyballing their healthcare spend, everything is becoming more tailored and more personal. So when we learned that's how Athena is building required compliance training, i.e. making the experience fit your teams and not the other way around, we were pretty blown away. Athena combines a comprehensive course library with AI to deliver employee training that actually looks and sounds like your team. You can start with Athena's out-of-the-box courses like harassment prevention that are trusted by organizations like Genesco, Zendesk, and Pinterest, then easily customize it as needed to match your culture without a ton of extra work. You can even upload your own policies, decks, or short prompts to get a custom course in any language in minutes. Athena connects to your HRIS, automates assignments and reminders, and brings everything together in one single platform, including an employee hotline, case management, and policy bot. With more than 3 million learners and a 93% approval rating, Athena proves compliance can do more than check a box. Compliance can build trust, reinforce values, and strengthen your culture. If you want to learn more, check it out at goathena.com/MPL. That's goathena.com/MPL.
So what's my story? So I would say that I'm actually not from New York. I love New York. I feel like I'm like a wannabe original New Yorker. But I grew up in South Carolina, and when I graduated college, I decided that I was going to find a job in New York and went to go visit my sister, got a suit, walked around in August trying to find a job, and then landed a job in like a sales job in marketing at Brand Publications, which is like the magazine Antiques Interview magazine. And after a couple years doing that and making not a lot of money, because publishing is not a lot of money, especially way back then, I was recruited into a benefit sales job. And that's kind of my entry point into HR. It wasn't that I woke up one day and said, this is what I want to do. But when I moved into the benefit space at a bank, Citi Smith Barney at the time, it was really something I kind of leaned into. And I ended up leaning into a bank where I had great leadership, lots of mergers and acquisitions at the time, lots of activity. So I learned quite a bit and grew my career through Smith Barney, living in a couple of different places around the country. And then from Smith Barney, I was part of the merger and acquisition where Smith Barney was sold to Morgan Stanley. And I was the head of HR for Smith Barney at the time, growing my career through there. And I leaned into that M&A transaction and led the deal team from an HR perspective on that, and then moved over to Morgan Stanley to set Morgan Stanley Smith Barney up and became the largest brokerage in the world at that point. And so from there, I ended up re-recruited back to my original leadership team at JPMorgan, because at that point, the CEO of Smith Barney ended up being the CEO of JPMorgan. And therefore, I kind of moved back over to JPMorgan, and that's kind of grew my career through JPMorgan. Many different roles. I never really stuck in. I really kind of went in and out of business partner roles and also center of excellence roles or product roles and so forth. And that kind of really prepared me to really be ready for more of a CPO job or CHRO job by the time I left JPMorgan in 2020 to run HR for American Century Investments. And then from there, I became the CPO for GEICO, and then turned a corner, came back to banking, and became the CPO for BNY in June of 2024. So that's my short version.
So for all of the aspiring CPOs, CHROs out there, what advice would you have for them? Is there anything that you've been more intentional about in your career that you feel like has gotten you to this role?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I get that question quite a bit. It really is trying to be more leaning into where the organization needs you the most and really always saying yes. There's rare opportunities when people come to you and they say, I want you to do this for us because we need you in this part of the organization. We need you to do compensation, or we need you to do talent, or we need you to be a business partner. And sometimes in your mind, you're thinking, oh, man, this is not what I want to do, or am I ready for this? But just always say yes, because if somebody is actually leaning into you like that from a career perspective, A, they have the faith that you're able to do it. B, you already have a champion because they're choosing you to do something different. And, C, the thing is that develop a skill set you don't have. The more skill sets you develop, the more marketable you become down the road. And it distinguishes you from the other individuals that may just have a lateral type of career path, or vertical, I should say, type of career path.
Yeah, that's great advice. Similar to the advice my dad always used to give me growing up. He worked for the state here in Texas or for the city, and he worked for the same company for I think like 25, 30 years and did all sorts of stuff. And he said that most of the time it was because they needed somebody to step into a role where they needed help, and he's like, I would just say yes. Like most of the time I had no idea. Like I think at one point he was head of HR. He's like, I knew nothing about HR, but I knew that if they were asking me that there was probably a need, and I figured it out. So I think that's such important advice to give people.
Absolutely.
BNY's been around forever, but for the people that don't know who BNY is, can you give us like the quick 30-second pitch?
Yeah. So if you think about BNY, we are like the bank of banks. So we basically, most of our clients are banks, asset servicing. We move trillions of dollars a day in terms of asset servicing and custody and clearing and so forth. And so we really, our major clients can be our competitors as well. So that's how I would think about Bank of New York. We do have asset and wealth services. We do have a brokerage shop. We have investment services, but we also really do service a lot of the bank's assets across various different products here.
Love it. And what, Shannon, you left out of the short version of your journey was this who's who. And I don't think Daniel even knew the names. I was in New York 2005 to 2009. And I feel like that was just the heyday of global finance and banking. I remember reading the news and always going to the Wall Street Journal or Business Insider and power plays here and consolidations there, like names like Jamie Dimon, John Mack, like there are a bunch of others that I'm leaving out. And, it was a fun trip down memory lane and going back to my early career. And I have so many fond memories of all of that. But as I mentioned earlier, I have 2 teenage daughters that I co-parent. And so I often think about the next generation and their early careers. And honestly, I get really worried. I have a lot of concern and anxiety because these younger generations, they're just built different. You said it yourself. You were getting lectured by your daughter, what things should look like. And I can relate to your daughter because, we do these interviews all the time and things have changed. And so where I want to start today, one of the things that you mentioned in our intake call that you're most proud of is major expansion of BNY's early careers program. And so I want to start there. You grew it from 500 to nearly 2,000. That's like a massive investment in a day and age where like every headcount is being scrutinized. CFOs are asking to, consider, does this need to be a human? Should this be a bot? Like, what do these things all look like? And so, it's not just the volume, but it's also the approach to how you're designing and rethinking early careers for the next generation. So, what led to that decision? And tell us some of the details of how you're looking at this program and what the future may look like for my daughters and others.
Hey everyone, really quick. I can already tell that this is going to be an episode where you're going to want to take a lot of notes. And that's kind of a pain in the butt when you're casually listening. So we have made it super easy for you. And we've turned the entire episode into a downloadable PDF so that you can enjoy the conversation and grab the notes later. The link is in the description below. So go grab that before you forget. And now, back to the episode.
No, it's a great question. And it's another question that's on a lot of people's minds right now in the age of AI and automation and all the different things that are happening. One, I would say, is that, credit goes to really Robin Vince. When Robin Vince became the CEO 2.5, 3 years ago, he really realized that we had an analyst program, but it was about 500 strong, and it really wasn't a core centerpiece as it is today. And so he, along with the people team at that point, pre-me, went on a journey to double the class size. So went from 500 to 1,000 and then went to 2,000 the year I came in. And it was really already set. He set the stage in order to make that happen. And it really was about investing in the future and investing in just what you talked about, these very brave, well-informed, talented individuals that are coming out of college right now are way different than when I came out of college, not to date myself, a long, long time ago. So they have a lot to offer. They have a very technologically savvy. They have got a lot of access to information and have learned leaps and bounds in a very short period of time and are willing to kind of like lean in and contribute. And so one of the things that I would say that makes the analyst program successful is that you have to actually meet these very talented early career analysts where they are and actually challenge them and give them very meaningful work. If you bring them in like your old, mom or dad's analyst program mindset, then they're going to leave because they are way more talented than doing back office stuff and they really can contribute a lot more. So what we're trying to do with our analyst program is that we're trying to actually educate managers as much as we're educating analysts to be able to really lean into their talents and for the analyst to lean into the manager's experience. So if you end up doing that well, then you have kind of magic in terms of being able to have this really kind of talented pot of people that can do a lot more than they could on their own. And then secondly, we are really focused on our hiring plan in order to create capacity and space for these young career and these analysts to come in. So as we lose people from attrition, everyone has normal attrition, we kind of pause and make sure that we're creating space for more analysts to come in. So where you see people maybe cutting back headcount or cutting back in different areas, what we're doing is that we're cutting back a lot less in the analyst program as we think about replacing people because we want to continue to grow that pipeline. We want to continue to bring in a really healthy, steady state of pipeline talent and then grow them in the company.
And so I guess, the scaling from 500 to 2000, I guess, walk us through the timeline. When was it 500? And, what's the program look like the last year or two?
Yeah, so right now, when I started, we were probably around, I would say 2023 was 500, 2024 was 1,000, and then we moved into 2000. And so right now we have all these cohorts coming together where we have around, I would call it, we have around 4,000 analysts, and then we typically have around 1,500 to 2,000 interns every summer. At any given time, we do open up our class in February as well for people who graduate in December, so we can get another cohort of individuals coming in December. And then what we end up doing is we have a pure rotational program where people will rotate within certain businesses. And we're going to introduce down the road the next year a franchise program, which would basically have individuals from various different tracks being able to go through more of a kind of franchise analyst program where they may be able to go through finance and CIO and a really kind of closer to the sun type of experience from an investment perspective for us too. So we're really trying to continue to be creative and create these tracks that are really attractive to our graduates.
You mentioned that part of the work is educating managers on the skill sets of these new analysts. And I imagine that for some of your managers that you have, they've maybe been at the company for 5, 10, 15, 20 years. So they were part of maybe an analyst program. What did you say? Your mom or dad's analyst program. What are you teaching them about this new class? Is it the obvious stuff or any surprises in there?
Yeah. So I think it's actually one of the things that we discovered, especially this last year, is you have to spend as much time and energy on the managers as you do on the analysts, because you're actually bringing them along at the same time, especially with this new generation coming out and what they can do. And they're learning things that I haven't learned. Whether it's more access to different technology, more access to AI, more access to just things they do in their everyday lives. And so what we're trying to do with the managers is we're trying to, educate them on the capabilities of these students coming out of school now, right at the onset. So they're bringing them into really strong dialogues or business problems and not just having them in the background. And then realizing that these individuals and training the analysts to really lean into the experience of the managers in order for them to get educated in areas that they're not educated in, and kind of bringing those two components together. It takes as much time and energy to train and develop managers as it does for the analysts. And then, because you can't take that for granted, you have to bring both sides along.
And so, Daniel heard me for about 2 years complain about the lack of tools for the manager role. I would hate to have to be at that point in my career right now, that kind of middle point. And the reason for that is more and more responsibility has been placed on the managers as we streamlined, workflows. They're the approval point. They have to, many of them are completing, a lot of reviews, the bulk of the reviews that are consolidating up to the senior manager. And they also have to manage varying types of work. Now we're talking about generations. And so that really, I think that really resonates with me. And it's great to hear that y'all are investing a lot there. Part of what I think also has created challenges for managers is just the hierarchical nature and levels, the number of levels that are in between, because it's not just my directs, it's their direct, it's a lot. And one of the things that I really caught my attention in our intake was this notion of needing flatter organizations. Yeah. And if we are able to create a flatter organization where early career talent can learn directly, they'll get more visibility of the senior leaders. They'll get a chance to just see. I remember, you mentioned Robin Vince, he was COO of the firm that I worked for. And I remember being part of this program that gave junior up and comers access to partners. And I just remember like that was game changing for me to hear someone like Robin say, this is how it works. This is how you progress your career. These are the most important things to consider of the business as you're looking to progress in your career. Like that's gold. And so I'm just curious, what does that look like, that pursuit of a flatter organization? What does that look like at BNY?
Yeah, I think it's such a key point because that's actually what formed, just going back to your story about having access to senior individuals and them actually elevating you or making you like really be able to lean in and have some accountability and what you're producing. And I just think that just forms people very early in a very early age. Happened to me when I was going through my career as well, and that really kind of stuck with me. Robin is absolutely the exact same the exact same thought. What does it look like here? Well, what we are doing as an organization is we've been on a transformation journey to be a platform operating company as opposed to a very siloed business. Now, we've been around, as you all alluded to, a long time, 241 years. We've done very well. We have had a very strong business for those years. We operated in a very, very siloed environment where the products and the businesses really had their own P&L and they operated very separately. And we would have similar clients, but they'd have 3 or 4 different people kind of knocking at their door at various different times. So what we ended up doing is we ended up changing the organizational structure where we're working more across the organization. We're focused on products, but we're focused on clients and client solutioning, which means that you have to actually work across the organization a lot more. And the best way to do that is by having more pod-like individuals. And that could be your engineer, your operations person, your billing person, your client service rep, your salesperson. And you have to kind of flatten the organization to have those fully functioning pods. And some people may be at different points of their career, but very successful, and they're still solving for the client. And therefore, taking out some of those layers and just flattening and having people closer to the work, I always say closer to the sun, closer to the client, allows people to actually exercise a lot more accountability in what they're doing. But it also allows them more exposure to other areas and more opportunities down the road. So because one of the biggest questions you get when you say you're going to flatten an organization, when you take out those hierarchical type of levels, some people are like, well, what's my career trajectory? Well, your career trajectory is across, not just up. And so you can, again, as we started the conversation, build your toolkit, be more marketable because you're going to have more skill sets if you kind of work in that type of environment.
And then, you mentioned elevating talent. And this is something we talked about in our intake call, finding those hidden gems. Would you say that, part of it, obviously, I'm guessing having a flatter structure, you can kind of see those heads pop up a little bit easier, but how else do you go about finding these hidden gems? Is there a process for this? Is it informal? What does that look like at BNY?
Yeah, I do think there's a lot to be said when you flatten the organization a little bit, that you actually end up seeing people rise to the occasion, and people that may be 2 or 3 layers, an older structure, kind of get a little closer to the work and giving them more experience, more accountability, and really allowing them to have more visibility in terms of what they're doing. And you just find them, and you also are able to keep your top talent, because if people feel blocked in any way, shape, or form, and they're super ambitious and talented, then they're going to find space somewhere else in another company. So one is being able to actually allow people to be close to the work. Number one. Number 2 is to free up their time so they can be doing more meaningful work as opposed to just administrative work, which is where it comes in more of the AI component automation type of discussion. And 3 is just really making the managers and the leaders' job all about talent and bringing talent along, because that truly is a legacy of a manager and a leader, is to be able to create that next generation and making that part of their role and their job and rewarding that as well.
I was thinking back to something that David Hanrahan said at MPL Live Austin last year. He very smartly predicted that the future of performance management would be powered by AI and real-time data. And I remember at the time immediately thinking, what does that even mean? And the way that he described it was, Instead of relying on annual reviews, he envisioned tools that surfaced insights instantly. So, pulling from real conversations, projects, and day to day work. Fast forward to today, and that now exists with Topic Flow. Topic Flow was built by the same team behind Seven Geese, just reimagined with an AI native approach. Their platform connects to the tools that your people use, like Salesforce and Jira, and brings coaching and feedback into the flow of work inside the tools that you're in every day, like Slack and ChatGPT, with no extra logins or app switching. And when it's time for reviews, all of the relevant data is automatically compiled, making reviews and calibration fast, fair, and grounded in real work, not memory. Oh, and if you're stuck in a contract with a legacy tool, Topic Flow will buy you out, import all of your past data, and fully onboard your team at no cost. If you want to learn more about this product, go to topicflow.com/MPL to talk to their team. That's topicflow.com/MPL.
And so remind me, scaling early talent, revisiting the organizational design of the bank. This is all part of a broader transformation. Is that right? I believe you mentioned that in our previous call.
Yeah. So that's really the platform. Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say, what all is included? I mean, transformation is a big buzzword today, and different companies are looking at it differently right now. So I'm just curious, can you give us a peek under the hood at what's involved in the transformation y'all are working on?
Yeah, it goes back to that platform operating model that I was talking about a little bit before, which is basically taking a look at what products and services do we provide to clients to serve that need, but how can we actually go across the organization and show up as one BNY and not show up in very disparate groups. And we are now about, I would say, over close to 60% in this new transformation operating model, this platform operating model. And the secret, and I've been around for a little while, and the secret to transformations is to stay committed to it and to do it end to end. And this one, I will say, I think is one of the most successful transformations I've seen, because we started out about a year and a half ago, almost 2 years ago, with our first phase of this transformation, and we did it in phases, and we learned from each phase as we went into it. And basically, it was creating this cross-sectional of people with all these different skill sets to create from all different areas, like I said, operation and engineering and product and client solutions, to create the right product and to create the right solutions to be able to show up better for clients. And we basically start with powering our culture and creating the culture around our people and setting them up for success in order to run the company better, in order to do more for our clients. And that's kind of our pillars. And we've anchored our transformation on 3 very strong pillars that everyone knows the language, everyone knows where we're headed. And then by phasing it in, we were able to learn from the people that went before us, and we got better and better and better. So we're now, I would say by the first quarter of next year, we'll probably be around 70%, 80% in the model. By the end of next year, we'll be 100% in this new model.
Amazing. And for those that are listening, if you're considering, questioning whether you should look at BNY as a place to work, let me tell you, Robin is an operational guru. What I tried hard, I was in human capital management. That's what the firm called HR. And at the time he was either COO or leading operations. And it was known to be the most tech forward division within the firm. And he's also people first. And those aren't the sorts of things that leaders change over time. It's like who they are. So I'm guessing this is still the part of the truth of Robin and the organization. Am I right? It's been a while since I've...
No, 100%. That's the one thing that I will say that has just been so amazing to watch as a chief people officer, is that Robin is all about the culture and all about powering our culture. And even though our pillars start with clients and with culture, every time he speaks, he says, no, I actually like to start from the culture side and work back to clients, because if we don't have the right culture and we're not human centric and we're not really developing our talent, then we're never going to be all we can be for clients. And to your point, Steve, that you said before, is that he's agnostic to levels, meaning like if you are like 3 years out of school and you can contribute, he will pick up the phone and call you and he will ask your opinion. He will listen to what you have to say. He operates mentally in a flat organization himself because he just wants to see the best out of everyone. It makes my job so much easier. And it's just a pleasure to help support that.
Well, I can tell in the way you're talking about, like, we know CHROs pretty well, and we know the ones that get fired, that have the great boss that you get fired up to come into work every day. And so we still have a lot to cover, and we're not quite at that point where we have to turn the corner, but we're getting close. So I want to keep it moving. And I would be remiss to not ask about AI. And so, that is, I think, how most people today, and I love that that's not how you've defined your transformation. I know that culture and clients are 2 of the 3 pillars. And I love that because I believe you cannot be successful. AI is not a technology transformation. It involves technology, but it really is a culture shift. It requires a different way of thinking, and not only looking at your tech stack, but also looking at redesigning how work actually gets done. What are the norms of the organization? Those are going to change. And that's really the big difference between the companies that are still struggling, or they're at the very, very early part of the journey, and those that are thriving and, are doing all the cool things that we're seeing about in the news. And so how does AI factor into the transformation at BNY?
Yeah, it's great. I think of AI as an enabler, right? And to your point, it's not like we are transforming because of AI. We're transforming for our clients. We're leveraging AI in every place we can leverage AI. And what we start, and this is kudos to Robin on this one as well. What we started with is really building our own AI hub at BNY. So we call it Eliza, a little nod to Alexander Hamilton's wife, as most people know, or if you don't know, that this bank was founded by Alexander Hamilton. It was the first bank in America and the first stock on the stock exchange. BK stands for bank on the stock exchange, which I thought was the coolest thing ever. So
that was after our first call. Sorry to interject. Daniel looked you up online and was like, "Did you know Alexander Hamilton was the founder?" And I was like, "Yeah, dude, BNY is legit."
Exactly. I mean, the Alexander Hamilton play will never be the same for me, because I went to go see it before I came to BNY, and then I went to go see it after, and I feel a little bit more, it's definitely here. But so what I would say about Eliza is that we built it, and it's now in its 3rd year. We built it mainly because we want to be in control of our own destiny, and we also wanted a very safe, accountable way to really lean into AI. And by building it ourselves, we're responsible. We audit it. We have all the control over what we're doing from a standpoint of our own product. And then we opened it up to our employees to have them actually, I would say, be onboarded to the Eliza platform. And what we mean by being onboarded is that they have to go through several hours of training in order to safely and responsibly kind of really go in and work in the AI environment. And we have 99% of our employees certified and onboarded into Eliza, which is astounding. So once we did that, we also opened up the environment for them to build their own agents. We have over 15,000 agents in the company. Some are personal agents that people are working with help with their schedule, with their inbox, and so forth. Some are put in production for clients. We have 100 digital employees in production. We launched our first digital employee last year to do payments repair. That's actually doing things for clients. They are managed by humans. The digital employees are managed by humans. So humans are in every step of this journey. And we've done a number of different type of hackathons in the non-traditional hackathon areas like people team, audit, legal, to really start to allow people to really think about ways that they can improve, simplify processes, do work better, get more time to do more advice, creation, product development, as opposed to just the administrative piece. So we've done a lot. We have several different boot camps going on during the course of a month where people will spend 4 hours twice a week learning more, I would say, more applicable AI, not just playing around in systems, but really kind of learning how to use it. We also built our performance kind of recognition award system around people who have created great agents and made processes better. So we've just been leaning on it in various different facets of the organization. And we also encourage people to use it personally, because the first time that you really kind of like, if you go to Perplexity or some of the other tools out, ChatGPT, using it personally allows people to really kind of expand their mind and make it a little less scary for them, because AI is coming, and what you can control is your education around it and the way that you embrace it and kind of lean into it. And then that way, I think it becomes a little bit less out there and a little less scary for people.
So Eliza, is this like a custom LLM that's built specifically? Okay, so it's built specifically for BNY, and then within this hub, there are different tools that you can use. So like there's like a Chat GPT equivalent. There's like an agent builder. Am I interpreting this all correctly?
You are. That's actually, you're spot on. I would say that just to give you an example, so we had a hackathon in the people team where separate individuals came up with 3 ideas on agents. One agent to like help with recruiting, one agent to help with like, policy changes and so forth, and one what we call a people team agent or a manager agent. So we brought these teams together and we built one agent in Eliza. And when we launched Eliza 2.0, we have a people team agent that basically incorporated all 3 of these different agent ideas and can answer questions as simple as, what is a new vacation policy, to as complex as how many people do I have working in Dallas, Texas? And it's provisioned in the right way so people can get access to information, to also like kind of more simple coaching techniques, like how do I talk to my employee about leaning into more project work or something. And so there's all these different things that we've done, and we basically built it. We put it through our governance process in order to get, to do it the right way. And we launched it. And we had 17,000 unique users. And remember, we are like about 50,000 people strong in the first month, and about 30,000 prompts or 30,000 questions to this people team. It's the most used agent because, everyone needs to know things about people. And it's just kind of one of those things that Eliza gave us the capacity to be able to build it very quickly and put it in production.
So I know you're most proud of the early career program, and that is amazing. Like that is great work. But I am most proud of your, 99% trained and adopted the Eliza. You said 15,000 agents built and are out there running, being managed by humans. And I won't go through all the stats because you just ran us through them, but like, that is incredible. Like I think this is going to be a real like surprise and eye opener. Honestly, Daniel and I have these conversations all the time. Like that's ahead of a lot of like high tech companies. And so like, what was it like? What sparked? I get the focus. You need a leader up top, someone like Robin. Who believes in human-centered design, who believes in systems thinking, who believes in democratizing access to these tools. And, and I love the fact that you mitigated, because I know financial services, highly regulated, compliance, like insane compliance, because you have to have that, right? And it's like, okay, well, how do we get our attorneys comfortable? How do we get InfoSec comfortable? How do we get just add to the list? And there are high tech companies that haven't figured these things out and have only a fraction of the barriers that a company like BNY has. And so how I think leadership's key in overcoming all of that, right? Because if CEO says we're going to do this, find a way, people find a way. But I'm more interested in the bottom up, the kind of the tactical embracing that your employees have done of this. Like if you were to pinpoint it to one that was at the hackathon, like what is it, or maybe a few things that really
Yeah.
changed the game for y'all?
Well, I mean, it has to be a multiple touch points on these types of big, huge, like, this is a huge change. Number one. Number two, it can be scary for people because they're trying to figure out what AI is going to do and how it's going to impact their career. So giving people access to actually learn and really understand it and giving them the training, the baseline training, but then opening up a sandbox for them to be able to create their own agents, whether it's in the legal department. The legal department was one of the first adopters to help like read through contracts and help streamline some work that took lots and lots of time and gave time back to them. So as you think about all the different departments that you just kind of rattled off there, if everyone is leaning in and learning it themselves, then it's less, it's more familiar, and they have a better knowledge base in order to make these calls or to ask the right questions. So I do think it's really about adoption across all different areas. It's about celebrating people's stories by storytelling, and like we do leadership forums every quarter. Robin does live BNY Live, which basically gets on stage and talks through different things in the organization. And he usually brings in like employees that will talk about an agent that they built or something, that solution that they found, and just really continuing the dialogue to make this more real for everyone. It just helps. And then it just builds upon itself, from a standpoint of becomes more common language than uncommon language.
I feel like, 5, 10, 15 years ago, maybe even like 3 years ago, like if you were going to go into finance, you had to be an expert in Excel. Like you had to know how to build all the models. And now I feel like the equivalent would be using these tools. And it sounds like everybody's building agents at BNY. I feel like I'm pretty advanced with these tools, and I don't think I've ever built an agent. Like I've maybe built like some workflows, and I've worked in GPT and Claude, and I've worked with vibe coding tools, but
Yeah.
I've never personally built like a digital, like, a digital employee that's working for me. And I'm curious, is this just like the norm? Like everybody has an agent, or is it just a pocket of employees that have created, the 15,000 agents?
Yeah, so some of them are in production from a business perspective, and some of them are employees that build their own agent, because we have like a really step-by-step process that they can build an agent that can help them. And that's part of the learning. And the 99% is like, go in there and learn, but go in there and do, and just build an agent to try to build an agent to understand how to do it. And the first blush of something like that is always not as great as the second or third time that you're kind of refining it. So we just asked people to kind of go into that sandbox and do that on early stages of AI adoption, to actually really talking about in productive agents that are actually doing work. And so there's two different ways of doing it. You can build your own agent, and then you can actually put an idea in the system to say, I think we can automate this process here, and this is my idea. And then the AI hub would actually prioritize those ideas and work with, and they would bring the ones that struck a chord up to the front, and then they'd work with those individuals to create that. And those were the agents that would be more in production. So it's just different levels of engagement and meeting people to where they are so they can understand what the art of the possible is.
I'm saying it here, y'all. I, for at least a decade, have said I would never work in financial services again. But Shannon, I would come work with you, being Robin and the team, because this just sounds awesome. Like, I won't go into all my details, but like I'm later career. And I honestly feel like I'm in early career, and I've picked up all these skills that as an HR person, as an entrepreneur, like a 3-time entrepreneur and co-founder, I just never thought I would ever have the ability to do these things. And it's so exciting. And I get it. It's also scary. And I do believe that two truths can exist. But I love what you said earlier. Like, yes, it's scary, but we all have control over learning and reskilling ourselves. And I think that is like so important in this conversation, but gets lost because I don't think that's generating the, the clicks and, the impressions that LinkedIn wants or whatever. It's not as sensational, I guess, of a conversation that like, yes, Gen X and, elder millennials, you too can learn these things, but I believe it to be true. And I think that, organizations like BNY are testaments to that. And so like, I said it, I'm taking back what I've been saying for a decade or so that I would never go back to financial services. So I think we have time for one last question. And one of the things that we were proud of with what we've created with the Modern People Leader is giving back to the community, and not in like buzzwords or hot topics and spicy clips, but like literally in something that one thing our audience can take away and go talk to their HR leader or go talk to the CEO about. And so I want to end with some advice. What would you say to those chief people officers out there, those HR leaders out there who want to build AI hub or just like build something unique and special, something that will really drive excellence when it comes to AI in their organizations? Like, what advice would you give?
Yeah. I mean, in anything you do, especially in these new trends, you have to bring people along with you. You have to provide them with the opportunity to learn, to develop, to take the mystery out of these types of trends. And the AI, we all know AI is here to stay. And how do you help people lean into it and give them the tools to do that? So you just can't turn around and say to people, you need to learn AI, you need to be AI forward. You have to actually give them the opportunity to learn, to have the collateral to read, to play in the sandbox and really figure out how to actually make this a reality. And then you also have to listen to them, because part of it too is it's always a dialogue. Once it becomes a dialogue, then you get more adoption. So one of the things that I think, because of if you take everything that we talked about, the platform operating model, the flattening of the organization, the leaning into early careers, the thinking about the managers and the manager development, all creates an environment for people to lean in, feel heard, and feel a part of something bigger than themselves. And then you give them the tools to then start exploring and educating themselves and to really kind of think about the art of the possible.
I wish we could keep it going. I feel like both of us have a handful of follow-up questions, but the last part of the podcast is something we call rapid fire questions. So it's 4 questions, and we'll try to get through them as quickly as possible. So question 1, what's one piece of advice that you'd give to somebody starting in HR today?
Definitely lean in to not only the craft of HR and people team and what you need to accomplish for the talent of the organization, but lean into the business, lean into the trends, lean into the technology, because what you have to do is you have to really set the stage to make your talent set them up for success the best way you can. And you can't do that unless you really understand the organization, the product, and kind of where you're heading.
Next question. If you gave your team a superpower nickname, if your team, gave you a superpower nickname, although I would be curious what superpower name you would give your team. But if they gave you a superpower nickname, what would it be and why?
I knew you'd stump me at some point. I'm trying to turn a curiosity into a superpower nickname. Can you guys help me out?
Say it again.
I was trying to turn. Go ahead.
What did Luke say his was? Like Vision or the Vision or something?
Oh, Vision. Yeah, it was like a Marvel. Yeah.
And then it just reminded me of the show That's So
like
Raven.
You're throwing me the Marvel characters. I'm like not as familiar with. So I would just say curiosity always comes to mind, because I think the more curious you can be, the more you're going to lean into things.
That's a good one. If you could steal one strategy from another company, what would it be?
So that's so funny. That question is an interesting question, and I know it's a rapid fire, and I'm going to turn it into a non-rapid fire. I actually, when I look at other companies, I love the ideas, and I love to like read about it and where they are. But every company is unique, and I don't necessarily lean into just because it works here, it's going to work at this company. You have to lean into your own company and figure out where they are and where they're headed, and like make your own story. Now you certainly can learn from others, but I actually think I've been more successful really trying to figure out what that company that I'm sitting in the moment needs, as opposed to what someone else is doing that we should be doing.
I think that's totally fair. And I love the long response to rapid fire. That's great. And so we are at that point. We've got one final question and then one final tradition. One of the top ways we've been able to get such amazing guests on this show like yourself is through this question. And if there's one HR leader that you admire or you think is just really pushing the envelope or representing the kind of next wave of, top tier HR leaders, like, who is that person? Who should we have on the show next?
So there's so many great leaders out there. What would be really interesting is for you to have Tracy Franklin on the show, because she is one of the first CHROs that is now taking on the technology CIO role, where they've merged people officer and chief technology officer. And if you think about, like, will that be a trend going forward, because technology and talent are so closely tied together? So she works for Moderna. It would be a really interesting twist.
That would be amazing. Great suggestion.
Yeah, we've reached out to her in the past. We were this close to getting her, so I think that's our nudge. Yeah, we have to go follow up. Yeah. Okay, so final tradition of the show is something we call one word or phrase. And it could be anything. It could be one word, it could be a few words, just your way of like putting a stamp on the episode.
So stay curious and thrive together. Part of our principles, and I think it's just kind of very fitting.
God, see, I love it. I'm going to go with culture, because the fact that you just like so easily knew that and nailed that's all the culture. Like, you're embodying the culture. So that's my one word.
I'm going to say Eliza Hamilton. I learned something new every episode. Now I know that was his wife, and you reminded me that he was one of the founders of BNY. Like, who else can say that their company was founded by somebody like Alexander Hamilton? So
it's such a cool stat.
Yeah. Really is.
Well, we should have known this to be true, Shannon, because our initial conversation was so much fun. But this has been an absolute blast. And coming back to where we started, like, this truly is the highlight of my week. And I'm grateful for you. I'm grateful for everything you shared on the show. I'm grateful that you trusted us to be a platform for you. So thank you so much for joining us today. It's been amazing.
It's been great. I really appreciated spending more time with both of you, and look forward to maybe doing it again in the future.
Oh, yes. Well, you're part of the fam now, so we love to have our guests back.
Excellent.
All right, y'all.
Have a good week, guys. Bye. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of The Modern People Leader. We really, really appreciate it. And if you enjoyed the show, please leave us a 5-star rating. It would mean the world to us. And connect with us on LinkedIn. We want to know what you think about the show, and you can find links to both of our profiles in the show notes. Thanks again for listening, and see you on the next episode.